Take a deep breath for me. Hello, I'm Kwan Siu. Chapter 1. The Patient. 15 November 2017, Wednesday. There is a growth on your right kidney. The sonographer's words shot into my head like a flaming arrow and torched everything inside. At that moment, still lying down on the examination table, I was fighting a rising panic. My heart was hammering erratically in my chest as if it wanted to leap into my throat. What is it? I asked with what little was left on my sound mind, already knowing she was not going to tell me anything in detail, yet my irksome nature made me demand, irrationally, an answer that was not there. This was supposed to be a routine gynecological screening, which I scheduled and showed up for diligently every year. It was routine, it was not pleasant, but it was supposed to be unremarkable. Most gynecological screenings include a pap smear test, ultrasound scan of the pelvis, breast exam, pelvic exam, urine test to check for infections, and general health checks such as measuring one's weight and blood pressure. However, being a very thorough gynecologist, my doctor's clinic also included an ultrasound scan of the abdomen. This was when my account of subsequent events began to evolve into a book. As the probe of the ultrasound machine continued its cool glide across my abdomen, my head was in a pathetic mess. Although at this juncture, an impression was not yet possible, my thoughts began to tread a dark path. I could feel nothing, unaffected even by the chill of the air conditioning, consumed solely by a sense of blank terror, yet still managed to heed the instructions given by the sonographer. Upon completing her examination, I was given a cup label with my name and was instructed to provide a urine sample. I thought I heard her mention that my doctor would be with me in a few minutes, but I was not certain, because at that point a tsunami of emotions was crashing into my head and drowning everything in sight. My movements after that were mostly autopilot. I went to pee as instructed and then was ushered into a room to see Dr. Cervix, my gynecologist. I learned that everything within his purview was satisfactory. However, he couldn't offer insights into the growth detected on my right kidney. Swiftly, he generated a referral for me to consult with a urologist, Dr. Calix, conveniently located next door. My husband, who shall be known as Yoda, because he was the embodiment of wisdom, humility, and everything good, called to ask if I was ready for him to come pick me up. As soon as I told him about this unexpected finding, he came immediately and waited alongside me for the consultation with Dr. Calix. We didn't have to wait long. Dr. Calix ushered us into his office and I handed him the referral from Dr. Cervix. A genial, middle-aged man. Well, I suppose many medical specialists fall into that group given the length of their training. He immediately struck a positive chord with me. I was then instructed to recline on the examination table for him to scan my kidneys with the ultrasound machine. This small protrusion from my right kidney appeared to be a cyst. Although cysts are common in various body regions, this particular one exhibited some irregular features. Dr. Calix needed a computerized tomography, also known as CT, scan to obtain more comprehensive information and promptly requested one. Given the procedure's fasting requirement, it was scheduled for the following day. He didn't tell me anything else, not that I didn't ask relentlessly, but because there were too many possibilities and he didn't want to escalate my anxiety. I was anxious all the same. I was quiet in the car, although Yoda repeatedly tried to engage in conversation to divert my thoughts from the cyst, which, he emphasized, could be harmless. I was not naive to assume that it was. Having cared for numerous individuals, I understood that a CT scan wasn't typically ordered for something innocuously harmless. I lacked the appetite for the remainder of the day and found myself acting like a petulant, overly entitled child, even I didn't like myself very much at that moment. Despite being utterly fatigued, sleep eluded me that night. My thoughts lacked a specific focus. Yet my mind wove a tapestry of subconscious unease. The words "why me" echoed repeatedly, accompanied by an ominous sense of dread, as if tragedy would strike if I stopped worrying. I recognized the early signs of anxiety and understood their irrationality. Yet I found myself unable to halt the spiral of thoughts. Eventually, sleep did descend, but only after overthinking had drained me into exhaustion. 16 November 2017, Thursday. I accompanied many individuals to CT scans in the past, but this was my first. A cocktail of feelings, cold, hunger, thirst, nervousness, surged through my body, yet I proudly remained physically calmed and controlled, quietly observing all that was going on around me, but mentally my emotions were in turmoil. Despite having my Kindle with me, an ever-present companion in my bag due to my love of reading, I couldn't summon the concentration to derive any enjoyment from it today. A poignant question to ponder at this moment was, what was I so afraid of? The CT scan required no surgical interventions, and I only needed to lie down and be still for approximately 20 minutes. Unless I had an unknown drug allergy, most of the time CT scans were uneventful. When I broke down my thoughts and analysed them logically, it became apparent that it wasn't the scan itself causing my nervousness, rather it was the potential findings afterwards. Individuals grappling with anxiety often find themselves dwelling in the future. Before long, my number was announced. I was asked to drink a cup of contrast, which tasted very much like overly diluted orange cordial, and was ushered into a waiting area and into a changing room, where I was told to change into a gown and to remove every metallic object on my body and store them in one of the storage lockers. An intravenous, also known as IV, cannula was set on the back of my left hand by a nurse. While the procedure was typically quick and uncomplicated, she struggled when setting mine. When it was done, I was made to wait some more. When it was my turn, I was directed into a room with a machine resembling a sizable donut, with a table that extended through its center, presumably where I would be positioned for the scan. The room was noticeably cold, with the metal table intensifying the chill. My anxiety only heightened the discomfort. The technician walked over to explain what would happen during the scan. Noticing that I was shivering, he piled more thick blankets on top of me. Little did he know, I was shivering more from nervousness than from cold. After placing both my arms above my head, the technician left the room, and all subsequent instructions were relayed through a speaker. The table I was lying on moved back and forth during the scan, and I was asked to breathe in, hold my breath, and breathe out repeatedly. I was prompted before the contrast was injected, yet when it occurred, I was shocked by the sudden intense hot sensation, a transient warmth rapidly spreading throughout my body. Simultaneously, a metallic taste appeared at the back of my throat, causing a momentary alarm. As the warmth spread, there came a sensation of wetting myself, although that didn't exactly occur. As quickly as these sensations came, they disappeared. A few minutes later, it was done. Yoda took me to lunch after that, yet every morsel of food tasted like paper. The sole purpose of consuming at that moment was to starve of hunger. So immersed I was in self-pity. Everything and everyone in my surroundings blurred into a noisy haze. My scan report was ready in an hour, but I wasn't eager to pick it up. I preferred learning the results alongside Dr. Calix during our scheduled meeting the following day. However, Yoda, being both impatient and persuasive, drove me back to the hospital despite my reluctance. Faced with the prospect of causing a significant hold-up at the hospital entrance, I begrudgingly got out of the car. Like a child with a tantrum, I slammed the car door and stomped with deliberate steps and a fuming head to the imaging desk. Complex right renal cyst, Bosniak 3. While I might not comprehend the intricate medical terminology, that didn't hinder me from learning new ones. With somber reluctance, I reached for my phone and initiated an internet search on Bosniak. As row upon row of search results materialized on the screen, my heart sank. None of the information painted an optimistic picture. There was not even a glimmer of hope suggesting that the situation could be unremarkable. Bosniak category 3 cysts are more likely to be malignant. Bosniak 3 cysts has a 60% chance of malignancy. Incidence of malignancy in complex cystic renal masses. Bosniak category 3 cystic masses thought to have a malignant risk of 40 to 60%. Suddenly, the scheduled appointment with Dr. Calix the next day felt too distant. I needed to talk to someone who could provide a more comprehensive understanding of my situation immediately. Upon returning to the car, I impulsively called Dr. Calix's clinic, unreasonably insisting on an immediate appointment. Unfortunately, he was in surgery, which was very likely to last until the evening. Frustratingly, there was nothing else I could do until the next day. 17th November 2017, Friday. I couldn't shake the feeling of anticipating the worst as I sat waiting in Dr. Calix's waiting room. I had no longing for breakfast this morning, and I started to regret it. My stomach voiced its displeasure, and I felt helpless to elevate it. My name was called, and I promptly stood up and entered Dr. Calix's office, with Yoda following closely. Dr. Calix's computer screen displayed an array of images of Bosniak cysts from internet search. "You know, I did that too, yesterday," I told him haughtily. "I hope you are not just finding out what a Bosniak 3 is at this moment." My blunt sarcasm shocked him. In a different circumstance, it would be almost fun to see him struggle to decide if I was serious or jesting. He hesitated for a moment before turning to me and providing an explanation of my CT scan. "Your cyst is too small to be classified as a Bosniak 3. The only reason it is classified as such is that there is a stretch of the wall that is slightly thicker," he explained. "Let me talk to the radiologist." And with that, he picked up the phone and called his colleague down at imaging. He highlighted his observation and opinion, yet the radiologist insisted, according to guidelines, they had to classify it as a Bosniak 3. With that, the phone call ended. Dr. Calix then turned to me and said, "I'm going to give you the same advice as to any member of my family should they be in the same situation. Get a second opinion from another urologist, repeat a CT scan at another hospital, and compare both findings. A biopsy is not possible because it is liquid inside and we do not want to puncture it. If it is still a Bosniak 3, we need to remove it." This was precisely why I like him. He echoed everything I wanted to hear, especially the possibility of avoiding surgery. I excelled at evading problems, although I wasn't enthusiastic about undergoing another CT scan. A brief glance at Yoda affirmed his agreement. Our ability to communicate without extensive dialogue was likely because we both grew up speaking different dialects, so we spoke very little. I learned his, although not reaching proficiency, but he didn't make an effort to learn mine. Consequently, our conversations could occasionally be draining for me, akin to attempting to watch a movie while reading the subtitles simultaneously. My mental state had improved greatly this evening, though it hadn't reached its peak. Despite the anguish of facing a possibly terminal disease, I kept reminding myself to be grateful that the cyst, by now had been reservedly nicknamed Little Marble, was discovered at a time when action could be taken. I was certain that many people were not as fortunate. This positive disposition was rare and fleeting. Soon, the dread of facing surgery paralyzed me. This evening, Yoda opted to share some findings from his research, given my improved mental state, albeit only partially engaged. According to him, if surgery became inevitable, I had the choice of 3 options: open surgery, keyhole surgery, and robot-assisted keyhole surgery. Yoda strongly favored option 3, while I somewhat naively clung to an imaginary option 4, no surgery. 21st November 2017, Tuesday. Only a week had passed since the discovery of Little Marble, and I remained conflicted. Overthinking had drained my energy, and I yearned to transform into a bear and hibernate without a care in the world. Unfortunately, that was not to be. Although there was no immediate threat to my well-being, I couldn't irresponsibly ignore this finding indefinitely. Reluctantly, I began organizing my thoughts and mentally kicked myself for being such a wimp. Apart from my immediate family, I had not been able to share my concerns with anyone else. I was still trapped in denial, a dangerous state of mind to be dwelling in, after a week of listening to, "Don't worry, everything will be all right." I needed to hear that it was fine to be worried, a sentiment no one seemed capable of offering. I needed to unburden my inner turmoil to one who was calm amidst the storm. I picked up my phone and checked the time in London, but before I texted her, my girlfriend, Mary Poppins, because she was angelic and spread happiness everywhere she went, texted me. Our friendship stretched back to my early days in the United Kingdom, a comforting presence in a foreign land during my initial weeks of study. Meeting her in the student hall during my first week, I could never have predicted the profound impact she would have on my life. Mary Poppins guided me to create a home away from home and elevated my homesickness. She was a friend who became family. Upon hearing my news, Mary Poppins wanted to book a flight to be by my side. Deeply moved, I cried a little, but I couldn't allow her to do that. Eventually, we reached an agreement that I would keep her informed of my plans once they took shape. 1st February 2018, Thursday. I landed in Bangkok bright and early on a clear day, starkly opposed to the inner turmoil I felt within. After witnessing my mental turbulence for the past weeks, Yoda decided I couldn't continue this way indefinitely. Given my frequent travels to Bangkok, he suggested I seek a second opinion here. A doctor I was closely acquainted with highly recommended that I consult her colleague, Dr. Chop, a urologist at the teaching hospital. I submitted my CT scan report and CD to him when I was here last month. Unfortunately, the CD could not be used. He had only the report from the radiologist for reference, which was insufficient for him and his team to formulate a well-informed decision. He recommended undergoing a magnetic resonance imaging, also known as MRI scan. So here I was. I didn't think I was claustrophobic. Yet, when the table I was lying on moved slowly into the tunnel that housed the coils and magnets of the MRI scanner, my heart could not help but accelerate. Unlike the CT scanner, which resembled a giant donut, the MRI scanner looked more like a colossal sausage bun, with me being the sausage. The MRI scan took longer, about 45 minutes, and required me to hold my breath repeatedly for extended periods. It was also a notably noisy procedure, with frequent clanging sounds akin to a wayward child being let loose inside the machine with a hammer. Although I was provided with a set of headphones, which was intended to entertain me with music and relay instructions, it mostly emitted noisy static. I doubt that anyone checked the headset as part of their preventive maintenance. I would have preferred going through the scan without it. Dr. Chop would meet with me the following day after he had discussed my case at the radiologist conference. To pass the time, I wandered around a shopping mall, a pastime that didn't particularly appeal to me, but there were not many places in Bangkok that I had not already been to or had any inclination to go. 2nd February 2018, Friday. Dr. Chop's office was situated on the 20th floor of one of the buildings encompassing the entire hospital and university campus, although I doubted he had time to enjoy the view. Despite our prior communications, this was our first meeting. He exhibited kindness and courtesy, patiently explaining my condition. The consensus at the radiologist conference was unanimous. Surgery was not immediately necessary. Based on their collective experience, most cysts of similar nature proved to be benign after removal, and Dr. Chop was hesitant to subject me to any unnecessary surgical procedures. After studying my scan, Little Marble was downgraded to Bosniak 2F. However, he emphasized the importance of not disregarding it entirely. For the time being, he suggested routine monitoring with contrast-enhanced ultrasound, also known as CEUS, scanned every 6 months, as there was a possibility of it changing, and we didn't want that to go unnoticed. I wasn't aware that I had been holding my breath until I exhaled a sigh of relief upon hearing the words, "No surgery." Suddenly, I was more animated, more curious, and more inquisitive. Once the veil of fear lifted, I effortlessly reverted to my academic temperament. I harbored an active desire to learn about anything and everything, and Dr. Chop proved to be a generous teacher. He patiently answered all my questions except one: how did Little Marble come about? I believed that if I could identify the root cause, I could potentially avoid the problem. While Dr. Chop likely encountered many patients like me, he displayed neither surprise nor annoyance. His approachability was evident. We would establish a monitoring schedule, and once in place, Dr. Chop would get in touch with me again. I texted my family about this positive development, and they were instantaneously relieved. My mother, the beacon of positive energy, could not help but add, "I told you so." Now, staring out the window from the 20th floor waiting room, I noticed the view which I hadn't before. Nothing significant occurred in 2018. I went back to see Dr. Chop twice and we monitored Little Marble with CEUS. Before each scan, I would become anxious and agitated, only finding relief once Dr. Chop informed me that the condition remained unchanged. A few close friends with whom I shared the existence of Little Marble had conflicting opinions on how I handled the situation. The day before my second CEUS, I received a text from Kermit. "What's up?" Kermit said, "If you are not at peace with your condition, why don't you consider removing the cyst?" I said, "The whole idea is to avoid surgery." Kermit said, "You are as stubborn as a mule. Why must you torture yourself like this?" I said, "I don't know. If I knew, I wouldn't behave as such, would I?" Kermit said, "Please think long and hard about this. I don't like to see you like this." Kermit was a friend from school, and still a friend after 30 years was indeed a magical connection. He was right. This was the cruelest form of emotional torture, yet I was willing to endure it repeatedly to avoid surgery. My anxiety felt like an overestimation of the potential threat, perceiving it as almost imminent with the worst outcome, while underestimating my strength to cope. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what I feared. It was like walking around a building endlessly, each time faster, yet arriving nowhere. It was an exhausting, pointless journey. Yet I fear imminent catastrophe if I stop. 27th May 2019, Monday. I was back in imaging for another CEUS. It was my third or maybe fourth. I wasn't certain. As usual, a cannula was inserted, this time on the back of my right hand. There were two radiologists in the room with me. I believe one was a student or a doctor in training, as he diligently took notes and asked questions. I was instructed to lie down on my side and turn in the opposite direction for a clearer view of my kidney. My right hand, housing the cannula, rested behind me on the examination table. This time, the scan took longer than usual, and at one point, one of them had to go out to get another doctor to come in to reconfirm an observation. The tiny room was getting crowded now, and unsurprisingly, my anxiety levels were gradually rising. Something was not right, and I didn't like it. Fear tormented me again. Little did I know, that was the list of my concerns at that moment. Suddenly, I was shivering. No one in the room seemed to notice. Assuming it was just another panic attack, I struggled to remain still for them to complete the scan until I felt moisture spreading up my back. Turning around, I was horrified to discover the blood-soaked shit beneath me. The cannula stopper was not in place, and my blood had been dripping out for the past 20 minutes or so. The janitor had to enter the room to clean up the puddle on the floor. It resembled a scene from a gruesome massacre. Despite 3 doctors being present, they were so fixated on Little Marble that not a single one diverted their attention from the screen. I was uncertain about the amount of blood I lost, possibly half a pint, but I felt dizzy and couldn't sit up properly. Consequently, I was left lying there until I regained the strength to get up. The doctors did not return. A nurse eventually entered to check on me. I was angry, but I lacked the energy to express it. Yoda, who came with me to Bangkok for all my scans, waited outside, oblivious to the entire drama. When I finally emerged, he saw my blood-soaked gown and had a mind to confront the responsible parties. I intervened, as I prefer not to waste time on confrontation. Weak and tired, all I wanted was something warm to drink and to escape from that freezer of a place. 28th May 2019, Tuesday. Again, Dr. Chop saw me after the radiologist conference. This time he was repeatedly emphasizing the area on Little Marble with the thickened wall. I might have fallen into complacency about my condition for the past year. I paid very little attention. I was aware of the thickened wall all along, so this was nothing new. I didn't even pay attention when he mentioned that for my upcoming appointment, he required a CT scan. The second half of the year went by uneventfully, probably because of my contentment with my physical health. I diligently showed up for all my routine screenings and all was splendid. I was full of energy and vitality. Apart from the existence of little marble, I would classify myself as fit. 4th December 2019, Wednesday. It had been 2 years since my first CT scan. I had forgotten I needed to fast for it. Yoda and I had a light breakfast at the hospital, only to be told later that I should not have. It was highlighted in the appointment email sent to me prior. However, due to my carelessness, I didn't pay attention to it. I had to wait for 4 hours. We brought the children this time, and while we were at the hospital, they were with their godmother Kendra. Kendra and I had been friends since primary school. She was one of the most selfless people I know. She had so generously opened her home to us whenever we were in Bangkok and offered to babysit for us whenever needed. Today was such a day. 4 hours passed by very quickly when one was made to perform many preparation procedures before the scan. Another changing room, another cup of contrast, another cannula. However, this time, the radiologist himself insisted on setting the IV line for me instead of the nurse. He was possibly bored with his day and looking for a break in his routine. He should not have. He was terribly out of practice. Despite grasping and studying my arm for an extended period, he was still unable to locate a good vein. I ended up with multiple stabbings of the needle. Ouch, ouch, ouch. I could not even punch him because he was holding sharps. When the scan was complete, we left the hospital to meet with Kendra and the kids in the city. Little did I know, the result of the scan would be very different this time. Bosnek 4. Malignancy cannot be excluded. Thank you very much for listening. If you would like to keep following the story, click here to listen to the next chapter. And if you're new, you can start from the beginning by listening to the full playlist here. Don't forget to subscribe so you'll know when the next chapter is released. Until then, take care, take a deep breath, and I'll see you in the next one.